Welcome to a tale of quiet suffering, searing humiliation, and the sweet, unexpected bloom of triumph. Prepare yourselves for a narrative that delves into the hidden corners of family dynamics, where perceived slights fester, and the desire for vindication burns brighter than any spotlight. This is the story of Emily, a woman underestimated and overlooked, who, with a single, perfectly executed act of defiance, transformed her humiliation into a spectacle of her own making. The air in the grand ballroom of the Oakhaven Country Club was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, freshly cut lilies, and the cloying sweetness of impending celebration. Chandeliers, dripping with crystal, cast a warm, golden glow over the impeccably dressed guests, their laughter and chatter a symphony of polite revelry. Tonight was Jessica's night, her engagement party, a lavish affair meticulously orchestrated to reflect her perceived perfection and her fiancé's undeniable wealth. And in the midst of it all, Emily, her cousin, felt as inconspicuous as a shadow, her presence barely acknowledged, her worth meticulously diminished. From the moment she'd stepped through the ornate double doors, a familiar wave of unease had washed over Emily. It was a sensation she'd grown intimately acquainted with over the years, a subtle tightening in her chest, a prickle of anticipation for the inevitable belittling that accompanied any family gathering. Her parents, bless their hearts, had been the first to set the tone. "Don't embarrass us tonight, Emily," her mother had admonished, her voice a low, urgent whisper that managed to carry an astonishing weight of expectation. "Jessica's future husband is very influential. Just try to be useful, maybe help out with the drinks." Her father, ever the pragmatist, had merely nodded, his gaze already drifting towards the glittering crowd, scanning for faces of importance. Emily was 27, a vibrant, intelligent woman with a quiet strength and a fiercely independent spirit. But in her family's eyes, she was merely the counterpoint to Jessica, her older cousin by 2 years. Jessica, the golden child, the paragon of success. Jessica, with her immaculate medical career, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, her perfectly sculpted fiancé, Richard, a man whose family name alone carried more weight than Emily's entire professional aspirations. Every milestone in Emily's life, every achievement, every struggle, had been inevitably filtered through the lens of Jessica's supposed superiority. If Emily got a promotion, it was met with a "that's nice, dear," but Jessica's already a senior resident. If Emily bought a new car, it was "is it as reliable as Richard's luxury sedan?" The comparisons were relentless, a subtle but constant erosion of her self-worth. Tonight, the comparisons felt particularly acute. Jessica, radiant in a shimmering ivory gown, flitted through the crowd, a beacon of effortless charm. Richard, a handsome, somewhat aloof figure, shadowed her, a constant reminder of the societal pinnacle she had apparently scaled. Emily, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, felt like an extra in a play where she had no lines, no purpose beyond being a silent, almost invisible backdrop to Jessica's starring role. She found herself drifting towards the edges of the ballroom, seeking refuge in the anonymity of the periphery, observing the scene with a detached, almost anthropological curiosity. She had tried to engage her parents earlier, to share a fleeting anecdote about her week, a small victory at work. But their attention, as always, had been elsewhere, drawn inexorably towards the gravitational pull of Jessica's orbit. "Later, darling," her mother had murmured, her eyes already fixed on Jessica, who was now holding court with a small cluster of well-heeled guests. "Go on, be a good girl and see if the caterers need any help bringing out the champagne." It wasn't a request. It was an expectation, a gentle but firm relegation to the role of glorified staff. As the evening progressed, the initial hum of polite conversation began to escalate, fueled by flutes of champagne and the intoxicating atmosphere of celebration. Emily, true to her parents' subtle directive, found herself instinctively clearing empty glasses, directing guests to the restrooms, and even, at one point, retrieving a dropped napkin for a distinguished-looking gentleman who mistook her for a member of the catering staff. Each act, though small, chipped away at her resolve, leaving behind a residue of quiet indignation. Then came the moment that, in retrospect, would serve as the catalyst for everything that followed. Jessica, her voice amplified by the general din, suddenly called out, "Oh, there's Emily. Everyone, don't mind Emily. "She's not really here as a guest. She's just helping out with a few things tonight, aren't you, dear?" The words, delivered with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, landed in the crowded ballroom like a perfectly aimed dart. A ripple of polite, then less polite, laughter spread through the immediate vicinity. Emily felt her cheeks flush a fiery crimson, the heat creeping up her neck and into her ears. She glanced at her parents, hoping for a flicker of defense, a reassuring glance, anything. But they were both smiling, nodding along with the other guests, their expressions a mixture of mild amusement and, dare she say, faint approval. "This is fine," their silent complicity seemed to say. "This is just Emily being Emily, useful but unremarkable." One of her aunts, a woman known for her barely disguised snobbery, leaned in conspiratorially to her friend, her voice a stage whisper that carried distinctly in the sudden lull. "Poor Emily," she murmured, her gaze sweeping over Emily with a mixture of pity and disdain. "Always the odd one out, isn't she? Never quite found her footing, unlike our Jessica." The words, though seemingly soft, felt like a physical blow. Emily's stomach twisted. Her eyes burned, but she fought back the sting of tears, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She maintained a placid, almost neutral expression, a mask she had perfected over years of similar encounters. On the outside, she was still composed, but inside, a quiet fury began to ignite, a slow, steady burn that promised to consume everything in its path. What no one in that room knew, what no one in her family had ever bothered to ask, was that Emily was far from the odd one out or unremarkable. For the past year, while Jessica was meticulously planning her extravagant wedding and climbing the corporate ladder in a well-established hospital, Emily had been quietly, passionately, pouring her heart and soul into something entirely her own. She had founded a tech startup, a small but ambitious venture focused on an innovative app designed to streamline logistical processes for small businesses. It had been a grueling, often lonely journey of late nights, endless coding, and countless rejections. But Emily, with her innate intelligence and unwavering determination, had persevered. And just 3 days prior, against all odds, her nascent company had closed a significant seed funding round, a 6-figure deal that promised to catapult her vision into reality. The press release, detailing the investment and highlighting Emily Thompson, CEO, as the driving force behind the innovative new venture, had gone live that very morning. Emily had considered telling her parents, sharing her triumph, but the memory of their dismissive reactions to her past successes, their almost pathological inability to see beyond Jessica, had held her back. She had decided to keep it to herself, to nurture this achievement in secret, away from the inevitable comparisons and lukewarm praise. Until now. As Jessica's condescending words echoed in her ears, and the muffled laughter of the guests mingled with her aunt's whispered pity, a daring, almost audacious idea began to form in Emily's mind. It was a seed of revenge, not born of malice, but of a fierce desire for recognition, for an undeniable assertion of her worth. The engagement party photographer, a cheerful, unassuming young man named Ben, happened to be an old acquaintance from college, a fellow tech enthusiast Emily had bonded with over shared late-night coding sessions and a mutual love for obscure sci-fi films. Their paths had diverged, but they remained friendly, exchanging occasional messages and supportive comments on each other's social media. Emily had specifically requested Ben for the event, a small detail that now felt like a stroke of serendipitous genius. She found Ben discreetly setting up a new lens near the buffet table, his attention focused on his equipment. "Ben," she said, her voice low and steady, a newfound resolve hardening her tone. He looked up, a friendly smile gracing his lips. "Emily, great to see you. How are you holding up with all the family excitement?" He gestured vaguely at the bustling room. "I'm fine," Emily replied, her smile tight. "Listen, I need a favor, a big one." Ben, sensing the unusual intensity in her voice, put down his lens. "What's up?" "You know that big screen they have," she said, nodding towards the large projection screen at the front of the ballroom, currently displaying a looping slideshow of tastefully curated, overly romantic photos of Jessica and Richard. "The one with their love story." Ben nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Yeah, I helped Jessica's planner set that up. What about it? I need you to swap out the slideshow, Emily said, her voice barely a whisper, but imbued with an unshakable conviction. Right now, I need you to put something else on there. Ben's eyebrows shot up. Swap it out. Emily, what are you talking about? This is Jessica's party. I know whose party it is, Emily interrupted, her gaze unwavering. But I need you to trust me on this. It's important. It's really important. And it'll be worth it, I promise. She looked at him, her eyes pleading, but also radiating a quiet authority he hadn't seen in her before. You owe me for that time I helped you debug your senior project, remember? She added, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. A slow grin spread across Ben's face. He remembered. That debugging session had saved his grade, and he was nothing if not loyal. All right, boss, he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. What's the replacement? Emily quickly pulled out her phone, navigating to the recently published press release. I'll send you the link. It's a news clip and then a static image of the press release. Can you make it loop? Ben took her phone, his eyes widening as he scanned the headlines. Whoa, Emily, this is impressive. Just get it on the screen, she urged, and make sure it plays big, really big. He nodded, a renewed sense of purpose in his movements. Consider it done. Give me 5 minutes to discreetly get to the tech booth. As Ben slipped away, Emily felt a tremor of anticipation run through her. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a mix of fear and exhilaration. She moved back towards the main gathering, positioning herself strategically near the back, where she could observe the entire room, and more importantly, the screen. The slideshow of Jessica and Richard's love story continued its saccharine journey. A photo of them on a romantic picnic, a selfie on a ski slope, a candid shot of Richard proposing, Jessica's hand covering her mouth in feigned surprise. The guests, for the most part, paid it little attention, absorbed in their conversations and the ever-flowing champagne. Then, abruptly, the image on the screen flickered. The romantic montage vanished, replaced by a momentary blankness. A few heads turned, a murmur rising from the crowd. Technical difficulties, someone whispered. And then, with a flash of brilliant, almost blinding light, the screen roared to life. Instead of Jessica's beaming face, a vibrant news ticker scrolled across the bottom. And in the center, large as life, was a crisp, professional photograph of Emily. Her face. Not the Emily they knew, the quiet, understated cousin, but Emily Thompson, CEO, her expression one of confident professionalism, a subtle, almost defiant glint in her eyes. The room, which had been a cacophony of cheerful chatter, began to fall into a stunned silence, a ripple of confusion spreading outwards from the screen. The news clip began to play, a polished, professional segment featuring a news anchor's voiceover. In a significant development for the burgeoning tech landscape, a new startup, InnovateFlow, has successfully secured a substantial seed funding round of $500,000. The innovative app, designed to revolutionize logistical efficiency for small to medium-sized businesses, has garnered considerable attention from venture capitalists. The camera cut to a shot of a modern, sleek office space, then back to the news anchor, whose voice continued. At the helm of InnovateFlow is its visionary CEO, Emily Thompson, whose groundbreaking approach and strategic acumen have been lauded by industry experts. Thompson, a rising star in the tech world, aims to disrupt traditional business models with her user-centric platform. The news clip faded, replaced by a full-screen, meticulously formatted press release. The bold headline screamed, INNOVATFLOW SECURES $500 K seed funding. CEO EMILYTHOMPSON poised to lead tech revolution. Below it, a detailed account of the investment, the app's features, and prominently, a glowing biography of Emily Thompson, highlighting her impressive educational background, her innovative spirit, and her unyielding dedication to her vision. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. A collective, stunned silence descended, punctuated only by the occasional clink of a dropped fork or the muted echo of a distant laugh from another part of the club. All eyes were fixed on the screen, then slowly, almost in unison, they began to swivel towards Emily. Jessica, who had been mid-sentence, her hand playfully touching Richard's arm, froze. Her smug smile, which had been a constant fixture of the evening, evaporated, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Her mouth, slightly agape, struggled to form words. Richard beside her looked utterly bewildered, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Emily Thompson," he murmured, his gaze flicking between the screen and the real Emily, a woman he had barely acknowledged all night. "Your cousin." Emily's parents, who had been chatting animatedly with another couple, suddenly grew rigid. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, darted from their daughter's confident image on the screen to their actual daughter, standing quietly at the back of the room. The color drained from their faces, replaced by a sickly pale hue. They had wanted her to be useful. They had wanted her not to embarrass them. And now she had done something far beyond their wildest imaginings. She had, in one audacious stroke, commanded the spotlight, not by being quiet and compliant, but by being undeniably, spectacularly successful. The whispers began, a slow, rising tide of murmurs that quickly grew into a buzzing chorus. "Emily Thompson, the Emily Thompson, from this family. I had no idea, she's a CEO. $500,000, that's incredible." Guests who had moments ago treated her like a phantom now swarmed towards her, their faces alight with a mixture of surprise, awe, and perhaps a touch of self-reproach for their earlier dismissiveness. "Emily, congratulations, darling, we had no idea." A distant aunt who had earlier whispered about poor Emily now pressed a lavish compliment into her ear, her voice dripping with sycophantic admiration. "Such an impressive young woman. We always knew you had it in you." Emily, her heart soaring with a sensation she hadn't known she craved, a profound sense of vindication, met each congratulation with a serene, almost regal smile. She shook hands, accepted effusive praise, and answered hurried questions about her app with a calm professionalism that belied the roaring triumph in her soul. Jessica, meanwhile, looked utterly lost. Her carefully constructed facade of perfection had crumbled before everyone's eyes. Her fiancé, Richard, finally managed to compose himself enough to approach Emily, a sheepish, almost apologetic expression on his handsome face. "Emily," he began, his voice awkwardly hesitant. I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me you were in tech? We could have talked business." His words, intended perhaps as an olive branch, only highlighted his earlier arrogance, his assumption that Emily's world held nothing of interest or value. Emily merely smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. "Oh, Richard," she said, her voice soft but clear, "there's so much about me that people often overlook." Her parents, flustered and visibly mortified, finally pushed their way through the throng of well-wishers. Her mother's eyes, usually critical, now held a bewildered pride, tinged with a deep, unsettling embarrassment. "Emily, my dear, we are so proud of you. Why didn't you tell us?" Her father, usually reserved, actually patted her on the shoulder, a gesture that felt both awkward and deeply significant. Their voices, however, lacked conviction. Everyone in the room had witnessed their earlier dismissal, their eagerness to relegate her to the role of servant. Their sudden, performative pride felt hollow, a desperate attempt to reclaim a narrative they had irrevocably lost. Emily simply nodded, accepting their belated congratulations with a polite detachment. She didn't need their validation anymore. The validation she craved, the recognition she deserved, was swirling around her, emanating from the genuine awe of strangers and the stunned silence of her detractors. The party continued, but the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. The focus was no longer solely on Jessica's engagement, but on Emily's unexpected, magnificent revelation. Jessica, visibly shaken, tried to reclaim the spotlight, but her efforts felt forced, her usual sparkle dimmed by the shadow of her cousin's brilliance. Richard, sensing the shift in dynamics, seemed increasingly uncomfortable, his initial aloofness replaced by a fidgety unease. After an hour of gracious receiving, Emily felt a quiet contentment settle over her. She had made her statement. She had, with elegant precision, turned the tables. She had proven her worth, not with words, but with undeniable, irrefutable achievement. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time for dessert, but Emily knew her work here was done. She didn't need to stay for the final act. She quietly made her way towards the exit, nodding a final, polite goodbye to a few lingering guests. Her parents called out, "Emily, where are you going? Dessert is about to be served." But Emily merely offered them a small, enigmatic smile over her shoulder. "I think I've had enough for one night," she said, her voice carrying a faint, undeniable note of triumph. She pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind the glittering ballroom, the shocked whispers, and the wreckage of her family's condescension. That night they wanted to make me small. Instead, I left the party bigger than any of them could imagine. And as she walked away, the night sky a velvet canvas above her, Emily knew, with a profound certainty, that this was only the beginning of her story, a story she would write entirely on her own terms. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Emily's inspiring tale of resilience and triumph. If you found yourself rooting for Emily, or if this story resonated with your own experiences of being underestimated, please consider sharing your thoughts. I appreciate your time and attention to this narrative.